Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is a stunningly beautiful open-world action-adventure game that I did not expect to enjoy as much as I have. Those concerned that this would simply be Far Cry with an Avatar paint job should be pleasantly surprised. While there are similarities and a foundation that many will find familiar if they have played a lot of Far Cry games, the world, characters, stories, and overall feel of the game far outshine any baked-in systems from similar games. This is my review after 5, which means I put at least 5 hours into the game, and with close to 7 total hours, I cannot wait to jump back into the world of Pandora. If you are curious about the combat, the graphics, performance, and various other systems within the game, please enjoy this spoiler-free review of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Starting out with performance, because your mileage may vary. Make no mistake, this game is demanding. All of my footage in gameplay will be on PC. My PC has a 2080 Ti graphics card and an Intel i9 9900K CPU. So my rig is not exactly the strongest, but it also is not exactly a weak rig either. I had to set basically all graphical settings to medium at 1440 to get consistent 60 FPS. And with that, we got very few stutters or hitches once I did. With all the settings on high, it was mostly 30 to 40 FPS in open areas, and worse if it was raining or there were other elemental effects. I should be getting a PS5 code as well, and I want to do a live stream of gameplay to test that performance, so make sure and look for that on my channel. But the important thing to note is that even on medium settings, I found the game to be breathtaking. Numerous times I found myself stopping, slowly panning to look at the colors, the lighting, the water, the animals. This is easily one of the prettiest games that I have ever played, and the performance will play a huge role in your enjoyment as the environments are rich with plant life and dense with movement and other environmental effects, which is what I want to talk about next, the fidelity. The world of Pandora is immaculately captured by the team at Massive and Ubisoft. The Snowdrop engine really gets a chance to shine in this game. Plant life doesn't just look good, it has texture and substance, and the use of lighting within the vegetation perfectly aligns with my memory of seeing Avatar in the theaters in 3D such a long time ago. Stunning vistas and landscapes that almost evoke a sense of wonder and exploration. It never really feels canned or lacking in identity. Some open world games can feel like an asset dump or a generic open space. Pandora always feels like, well, Pandora, and interactive plant life plays a huge role in how this game feels. And the use of pollution as a gameplay mechanic is also very effective. The contrast from bright, vibrant colors to monochromatic and lifeless is very effective, and it makes taking out the enemy bases especially enjoyable. Both fans of Avatar and those who have never seen the movies will likely feel a strong sense of satisfaction in how this game looks. You might think that playing at night is the best due to how the flora seems to come to life with the lighting effects that they use, but daylight makes the environments sing with color and shining and shimmering textures. The game is just simply beautiful. I see this game receiving high marks across the board for the graphics, the environment, and the overall fidelity. The sound design is another huge aspect of why this game is so enjoyable. Not since New World have I felt such a pleasant and relaxing use of ambient sounds in a game. There was one time where I loaded up the game and an NPC was playing a flute-like instrument in front of me, and the combination of the soft melody from the flute and the slow rainfall overhead, mixed with the wind and random ambiance from the wildlife, was honestly and strangely relaxing. I just stopped, I pressed record, and admittedly I actually stood there for a while after. Even just walking around during light rainfall was almost serene. The sound of raindrops hitting the plant life and the giant leaves overhead is just something I hope many people take the time to appreciate. Wear some good headphones or get your speakers and surround sound set up really well, because this game doesn't just look pretty, it sounds amazing as well, which just enhances the experience. It really creates a nice, sharp juxtaposition against the polluted areas or the mechanical sounds and gunfire from the enemy. So I had to make sure to give the sound design in this game its due praise. Sound teams rarely get enough attention, unless of course the sound design is bad, so props to the sound design crew. They really crushed it in this game. The use of haptic feedback and adaptive triggers is something that DualSense users should enjoy. I say should enjoy because it might bother some users. At first I wasn't sure, but the more I interacted with how the haptic feedback combined with the adaptive triggers for certain game mechanics, I actually love how it feels. There are two ways that this shows up. First, with gathering plant life, what basically amounts to a mini game somewhat inspired by lockpicking in Skyrim. You have to pull in the right direction, and you figure that out by lightly pressing the trigger and finding the smooth spot by moving the joystick around. And then you do a full pull on the joystick and the trigger once you find that smooth section, and then it comes off. If you get good at this, you'll remember what direction certain plants are, and it does affect the condition of the item you are gathering. So you want to basically, quote unquote, get good at this. And eventually, it does not show you the angle. It sort of shows you the angle when it first teaches you how to do it. After that, you kind of have to figure it out on your own, but it does maintain the direction. So once you figure it out for one, collect a bunch of it in that area, and you'll be able to get those pristine ranks when it comes off. That does affect the quality of it, right? Also weather. It will tell you whether or not when you scan it, if you can, pick it during the day or when it's raining, that will affect the quality. Okay, you may have to rest by a fire to pass time to ensure it's night, or be sure to gather a bunch in an area if it's raining if you know that particular item is better in the rain. Now, the second way haptics and adaptive triggers show up is with the hacking or the frequency tool. You basically have to hold the trigger down at just the right amount of pressure to line it up with the circle, and then you trace a path once you're done with the circle part. It's fairly simple, but oddly satisfying. Once the circle is lined up, the way the trigger depresses and sort of lets go, almost like there's been pressure let out of it, it honestly feels like I'm using a real tool in the game. So those who have a PS5, or if you use DualSense controllers on your PC, you're going to enjoy the various ways that they have implemented haptics and the adaptive triggers. In the realm of navigation, let's talk about the map and exploration. Using the map is fairly straightforward, and the topographic aspect of the map can help you figure out where to go at times. You can fast travel back to an area once you visited it, or you can just decide to walk and take your time, whichever you're sort of in the mood for. I did find myself sometimes wanting to just walk and explore, but other times wanting to fast travel. Be sure to check the info on the biomes, as that will help you when you're looking for certain weather conditions or items. It's actually useful information. Now, when it comes to exploration, I constantly feel like I'm changing my mind about how I feel about the exploration in this game. Many times the game gives you very little info to go on, so you will be searching an area for a person or a thing, and at times you're not really sure if you're going the right way. At least once, I got a little frustrated at the lack of direction. But then I find the path or the cliff, and then I end up saying, okay, no, that was actually organic. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I remember reading some of the early previews of this game, and they said that, a few painted ledges for hand grabs or maybe just some nudges on where to go would be helpful. And I know exactly what they mean. At times, you aren't really sure if you're going the right way. And that's not a big deal if you're exploring or you're gathering or just sort of moving around the world, but eventually you get accustomed to the game and you might decide it's time to be a little bit more quest focused, or you just want to move things along. And for that play session, you may find the dense jungles and the hidden paths a tad frustrating. All in all, I think it's worth it to have a more organic experience, and the jumping and the grappling is very generous. So explore away, try to grab that ledge, see if you can get up there, right? That's going to help you at times. You're going to find useful items, skill points, permanent health upgrades, and other great meaningful discoveries in the world. So take your time, enjoy it, but every once in a while you might feel a little bit lost. Ancestor skills are abilities that you can find throughout the world through memories or experiences that you have to go through. The first one, you get something called air boost, which is basically a second little jump. And at first, it does not feel that impactful, but the further I got, the more useful that I found it. It is more of a slight pull forward, if that makes sense, almost like you're swimming through the air. It's not a traditional second jump. Other ancestor skills are eject, which has you removing soldiers from their amp suits, drop impact, which lets you attack with great force when you drop from above, soft landing allows you to fall from a great height but control your descent, and lastly, deeper connection, which increases your bond with the Ikron, that's the flying creature, and it gives your Ikron more stamina. The normal skill tree breaks into 5 categories: survivor, which is health and survival oriented; warrior, which is damage and combat oriented. Hunter helps you with hunting. Maker improves crafting. And the 5th category was not unlocked for me in the first 7 hours. The skills are what you would expect in a game like this. I went for more health and damage in the early parts of the game, but there are other things like the ability to carry more materials or farm better and things like that. This contributes to your overall combat strength along with your clothes, your mods, and your weapons. And the ability to mod and customize both the clothing and your weapons is great. A mod on your shirt, it actually puts a physical item on you. Same with changing the string of your bow or the handle of your bow. You can actually see these things changing. And if you don't like how a mod looks or you don't like a piece of clothing, fret not, there is transmog. And not just transmog for the clothing or the weapons, but also for the mods. So one mod looked like a stone and it like put it on my shirt, and another mod looked like a water bottle. If you prefer the stats of one but the look of the other, you can do that. You can set that up exactly how you want. I found the customization and the going into the weapons and checking stats to be quite good and exciting to see that level of depth for each individual item. Each individual item can be transmogged and modded, and they have their own stats and their own perks. Now, one minor concern here would be the store. It is 90% cosmetic, and you do earn tokens somehow in the game. At some point, I got 300 tokens. I'm sure there's different activities and things that give you these tokens. So I went to the store with my 300 tokens. It seems reasonably priced. There was a couple of things I could have got for my Ikron. The gear in there, however, does have stats. You can buy gear for your character, and it was stronger than what I was currently wearing. So I'm not really fond of games selling gear, but it very much feels very avoidable as the game just is pouring loot and materials on you. I never felt weak or in need of better gear from the shop. So overall, I feel that the way they handle the skills and your gear and the customization, it's all handled very well. The various systems of survival in the game really add to the game feeling unique. Keeping food on you at all times to keep your energy bar filled so that you can auto-heal or move faster is just low-level survival enough that you will often stop and kill something for meat or grab some fruit from a plant. It really makes you sort of look at the world around you and live off of it. I actually like that quite a bit. Now, I didn't really get into the crafting, but gathering materials for crafting seems as addictive as the fruit and ingredient gathering. Similar to other crafting systems in other games, the better the materials, the better the potential results. It will show you the range of defense or damage that a given item will give you when you craft it, and then the color coding goes up from green to purple to better colors, indicating higher quality materials as well as the item that you're crafting. Now, the hunting is actually really enjoyable once you get the heavy bow. You can track an enemy's scent by marking them in the hunter's guide, and then if you look for their weak spot, you can get a clean kill, which gives you better results when you go to gather their meat or the materials from their body. I remember in Far Cry that always being a little bit frustrating. You'd go for the headshot and you might miss or whatever, but in Pandora, it's very, very obvious where the weak spot is, and it's extremely satisfying when you get that because you get better materials. Then there's the cooking. This is an oddly satisfying experience. You are discovering or using recipes. I would really encourage people to not ignore the food or the cooking in this game. It's tied to really fun loops of content, I think, with the hunting and the gathering. I find that to be very satisfying. It's a nice break from the combat with the soldiers. And the food gives you great benefits, and it helps keep that ever-depleting energy meter full. Clans are an early feature in the game, and you do not want to ignore them. You will find clans throughout the game, and you can earn favor with a particular clan through side quests or donating items to their communal basket. Now, don't just dump random items in this basket. It's not that effective. I tried that. Like, I'm just going to get rid of all of my trash. It won't really move the clan favor. They will have that basket with a specific item request attached to it. Take the time to do this, because the item rewards can be quite good. There's an early mission where they want you to do this with 3 different clan baskets, and do it because I got some pretty good stuff. This might make you sort of feel at this point in the game when this starts to happen, you're sort of going into areas, meeting clans, and all of a sudden there's lots of errands and fetch quests and side quests. If that's something that can start to annoy you, just ignore it and do the main quest or maybe interweave it. I think it's worth it. I think the clan stuff is worth maybe bouncing back and forth in between main quests, or just grab it anytime you're there. And then when you're out in the world working on a main quest, just kind of double dip. Sometimes they're just needing you to get a particular item. You can mark items and plants in your hunter's guide, and then you can find them more easily. I found them to be pretty quick, they were rewarding, and I think it adds a layer of lore to the game. The flying in this game is definitely something that I was glad that I got to experience. I was actually worried I wasn't going to unlock it in time for this review, but right around 6 hours, there was a mission for me to bond with my Ikron. Now, this really is not a spoiler if you've seen the movie, and it certainly is not a spoiler if you've seen any of the trailers. You know that you're going to sort of get your own flying guy, right, to fly around with. And it certainly is a great aspect of the game. The mission was great, and it really put on display the scope and the beauty of the world that they have built. Take a second and look around when you're doing this mission. It really is awesome. You are way up there, and it is stunning. The transition into flight, once I'm done with the mission, right, and you get to transition into flight, it was just awesome. The use of music and space and sunlight, it honestly was a breathtaking experience. And they let you name and even choose the color palette for your Ikron, which I think was a nice touch. I will say, though, my flight control experience was not great. You use the X button, or the A button if you're using an Xbox controller. You use the X or the A button for a speed boost, and then the sky is so huge and open, you really feel like you need to boost a lot. Like, you don't get the sense of flight because everything's so far away. Well, while you're doing that, you have to take your right thumb off of the X to use it on the right joystick to steer the Ikron. I was instinctively using X to go fast, and then I was trying to control the pitch of the Ikron with my left thumbstick. So my right's busy smashing the button, and then my left is trying to control the up and down nose with the left thumbstick. But the left thumbstick is for increasing or decreasing speed. So you may notice in my footage, I'll just randomly stop when all I'm really trying to do is pull up. So I was literally reaching across and using the right thumbstick with my left thumb so I could steer while using the speed boost. A simple rebind of speed boost to the right trigger or the right bumper would fix this. I'm not sure if they'll be able to let you like rebind on console. I've not played on console, but other than that, I think the flying and the flying mission was just fantastic. The last thing I want to talk about before giving you my conclusion is the combat, because I know many were worried about the combat in Avatar. First and foremost, I was one of those who thought this game should be in third person. Well, after experiencing the beauty of the world and the combat, I can say they made the right decision. This game belongs in first person. Now, within the combat, you have two basic approaches. You have weapons free or stealth. So let's just first talk about stealth. Stealth honestly feels good because you are fast, you can slide a good distance, and you can be using the heavy bow to hit weak spots, and that's just very, very satisfying. It's as satisfying as when you hit the weak spots when you're hunting. Taking out a mech suit with just one shot to the weak spot is very, very enjoyable. And I successfully took down a gas harvester outpost without being seen, and it was just really satisfying. Similar to how in Far Cry, if you like take out an outpost and nobody sees you, it sort of just ends it, right? But I didn't have to kill everybody. I didn't have to take everybody out. I satisfied the objectives, and then it was over. I didn't have to fight a big number of enemies, and it just felt good. I scanned the area with my sensibility, I was sliding into cover, and I was taking out enemies here and there with my bow. And I really liked how they didn't suddenly aggressively search and find me just because I shot like one enemy undetected. Far Cry always seemed to devolve into chaos. I would like shoot one guy, and they would magically know exactly where I was, even though I shot him from cover with the bow, and like nobody saw it. They'd find his body, and I guess a CSI crew would show up and tell him where I was. I don't know, but in this game, it felt like I was very much empowered to play stealthily. Now, if you aren't going to run stealth and you decide to go weapons free, I gotta say, I was actually surprised at how good the combat feels. It's definitely different because you sort of hip fire the gun, and the bow is very effective, but the gun is accurate, and it just feels good, even though you're not really aiming down the sight. Now, there may be guns later on that you do that with, but the sort of default starting gun, it just feels great. I didn't feel it was weird or awkward. And yes, it does seem a tad odd to take out mechs and like these armored machines with just a few well-placed bow shots. But again, you and your bow are huge. You are towering over the normal soldiers, and the impact of your arrows against those normal soldiers really communicates just how strong you actually are. Like, they go flying. Like, you can tell that the bow is very strong. You're also having to use the bow against big, huge creatures and animals, so the actual mech suits aren't that big and they don't seem that strong within the lore and the world, so it does seem to make sense. Overall, I was very pleased with how combat felt, and I want to get more gear and abilities to really ramp up my power and my strength in the game. Sometimes in games like this, combat can feel like a chore, but I honestly felt like both stealth and straight-up combat had their appeals. Getting discovered is a bummer, but you feel strong and you feel capable. Staying in stealth feels awesome and rewarding. So it didn't feel lopsided like some games can when they offer you the guns a-blazing option along with the stealthy option. It usually feels like one side of the game is more favored over the other. I will say that it did feel a little on the easy side. I was moving a lot. You can actually jump in a direction and sort of treat it like a dash or a dodge. It seemed very effective at sort of breaking the enemy's targeting as well as their aggro. I am hearing that the difficulty can swing hard on you sometimes. I have not experienced that, but I feel that it is appropriately difficult. You know, it's not meant to be brutally hard. If you want to up the difficulty, feel free. I felt overall that the combat is worth it, and I give it 2 thumbs up. Just a few closing remarks about some things I may have not mentioned in the individual systems. I do want to talk about story and some other stuff that I didn't want to spoil, so I'm going to be a little bit generic. We're calling these reviews Review After 5. It's meant to be for those of you out there that are just a little bit too busy to play every game. Maybe you get home from work after 5, and you just want to know if the game is worth checking out. And this is not meant to be exhaustive or cover the story and the end game and, you know, is it good, is it bad within how they round all that stuff out. I will say the story is a surprisingly big focus in this game. Now, some people may get annoyed with the pacing because of this. They stop you a lot. There's cutscenes, there's dialogue. It can be a little bit halting, but it makes the game and the world feel real. It feels meaningful, and the voice acting and the writing I actually think is quite good. And the way they set up why you are slowly growing in strength and learning all these new things and abilities as a Na'vi, I actually think it's quite creative. I actually think this game is going to score high with the review outlets that are out there. I could see it landing in the high 80s, maybe even the low 90s. I'm going to give it a strong 8.75. Now, unless the game completely falls apart in quality in the middle or the end of the game, which I don't foresee happening, UbiConnect says that I am 35% through the game, which means if you just run straight through the main campaign, if this pace continues, you would likely land in the 20+ hour mark for just the campaign alone. That's a great runtime for a campaign in a game like this. I would imagine if you explore, craft, cook, hunt, and really marinate in this game, you could easily hit high playtime hours in the world of Pandora. For now, I'm giving it a much stronger recommendation than I anticipated, and I'll be diving back in both on this channel with PS5 gameplay. Be sure to check that video out. But also, I'm going to be playing this in my spare time as well. I think this is going to be one of the games this year I take the time to finish. If you enjoyed this review, it will roll over into a live discussion, so enjoy that. Even if you're watching later, you can watch that live discussion. I'll be answering questions and discussing with a live audience. Make sure to hit subscribe, make sure to hit like, and then I can see you in the next video.